Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Baloo and the Simple Bare Necessities, and it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab expedition leader, Vineith Mahadev. Vineith, thank you so much for being here today. This sounds like a very fun topic, so let's dive in.
Thank you, Sunny. It is a fun topic, and thank you everyone for joining. And a very good afternoon, and a very, very good morning from the bear country, from central India. So Baloo is the sloth bear from the Jungle Book, and this bear has actually inspired a lot of us to love wildlife, especially the Indian wildlife, both in India as well as outside India, from the UK and United States and everywhere else around the world, people who have watched The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. So my name is Vineith. I have been a guide in the Central Indian landscape for nearly a decade. And in the last 6 to 7 years, I worked in a place called Satpura, which is an amazing landscape known for its hilly regions and diversity of tree species and rivers and a lot of sloth bears. So I have been guiding here in this landscape and also in various other parts of India, mostly southern India. That's where my home is. And eventually I enjoy being in central Indian landscape for its tigers and sloth bears and so many other diverse wildlife and bird species found here. So when you think of bears and associate with India, we often try and look at, wow, would there be a bear in India? So most common what you would see or popular ones are these polar bears or the brown bears in Churchill, or the American black bear back at your home. And also giant pandas somehow get in the popularity because of their cute looks. However, surprisingly, in India, out of the 8 different species of bears in the world, we have 4 different bear species. So the Asiatic black bear, which is one of the most widespread in the Himalayas. Then the Himalayan brown bear, which is very similar to the brown bears, are again in the Himalayan regions. And then we have the sun bear, which is the smallest of all the bears in India. It's got extremely long tongue, which is used to usually lick the insects, mostly termites and ants from the trees. So they live in the far eastern region in India and then towards the Southeast Asian landscape. And then there is the sloth bear. So sloth bear is one of the most common bears in Indian landscape, starting from northern India and all the way to the west and central India, and even in the eastern areas where India's the Grand India tour happens from central India and Kaziranga. Sloth bears are found almost in all sorts of landscape and habitat. So Baloo, when we think of, is the images mostly that is popularized in Jungle Book is usually the black bears, or in more recent Disney adaptation of using a grizzly bear. So these are the usual depiction of Baloo. However, the characteristic, the build, and the stories about Baloo, about the fruit eating, about Mowgli riding on his back, this is all the features of the sloth bears, which is found in the drier and more grassland areas of Indian landscape. However, black bears are mostly in the upper Himalayas reaches, which is the usual depiction in the cartoon. And the latest graphic depiction is the grizzly bear altogether, away from this continent itself. However, we're hoping that there will be a Jungle Book edition with this amazing sloth bear edition. So sloth bear is, as I said, it's usually found in deciduous forest or a dry tropical forest, and they prefer to be in rocky regions, in areas where there is excellent diversity of fruits and even more importantly, good reach towards accessing ants and termites. So these are specialized termite and ant feeders. So they have evolved to feed on these along with sun bears in the east in Indian landscape. And let's see how they've evolved to become sloth bears. So sloth bears, they get the name sloth because of the way their claws look like. So they have these five digging apparatus, which usually you have the two-toed or the three-toed sloths. So sloth bears usually have these long claws, and also their shaggy coat, the way they appeared in captivity, probably looked like very shaggy and sloth-like. But it turns out they're super fast. They can outrun humans on field, and their digging apparatus is really a great defense in all aspects. So sloth bear's characteristics is having this very round and long muzzle, and a shaggy coat without any undercoat. Basically, that is how they adapt themselves in the warm climate in India. So here temperature reaches about up to 100, and sloth bears live in this area. This is the one of the few bears which don't hibernate, and for that adaptation, they have to regulate their heat around the year in cold and all warm area also. So this is the landscape predominantly I worked and observed my wild sloth bears. So this is called the Satpura landscape, very hilly rocks, and these rocks usually break down and because of the rivers there, and they throw in a lot of interesting tier system of the soil structure, which gives the diversity in tree species and plant species, which in turn gives diversity for termites that these dead trees go into. And with this fruit diversity, the termite diversity, sloth bear numbers are really good in this national park and also regions around this area. And so sloth bear, to be a sloth bear, other than having a slothly toes, so another characteristic is that their mouth, the muzzle itself is adapted for sucking the termites. It's just like a vacuuming of termite mounds. So after the first few years, or even less, first few months itself, they lose the incisors, upper incisors. It forms reduced, and then there is a cone-like shape on the upper palate, and the lower lip also is very loose, so that they put their muzzle into a termite mound and blow in and then start vacuuming out the termites from these termite mounds. So this is one of the very unique adaptation. Then there is also the nostrils, which have muscles in just enough to shut those muscles so that the ants and termites don't go up to the muzzles. So this is where the sloth bear is highly adapted. For one primary reason is termites. Another primary reason is also the tigers. So for to keep themselves safe from tigers, the young of the sloth bear, the best camouflage that they get is on their mother's back. So often when we see sloth bears young, you see them piggybacking. This is the only bear in the world which piggyback their young. And uh, ironically, surprisingly, the other ant-eating animals, which are the pangolins and the other ant-eaters, we often see them also piggybacking. And one of the reasons for this is the large predators that they live with. And they're one of the greatest threat when they're feeding busy, when they're all their face, their muzzle, and their ears are shut, and even the eyes are shut, busy digging. So mothers have to really, they can't really take care of the young, leaving somewhere else when there is a tiger which is approaching, when most of the senses are buried in the earth. So this is the safest place that they can give, and you can see baby on board whenever you see a mother bear. So in the last 6 to 7 years, I worked in one particular landscape in Satpura. We followed several mothers, and a couple of mothers we've been following year after year. And watch them, observe these mothers uh, carrying these young for about a year to year and a half when they really get heavy to be on their backs. Then after a year and a half, they follow these mothers, and the mother shows them around where are the best places in the landscape to dig and find termites, and also other places where they can find fruiting areas. So this kind of education you see in mother bears for up to a year and a half to 2 years until they wean. And during that time, a male bear may visit, they may mate, and it usually takes about 7 to 8 months in their gestation. And these bears don't hibernate like most other bears in the northern hemisphere, in the far northern hemisphere, like the brown bears and black bears. So they since they don't hibernate, so you see them round the year, except for the few months in late October onwards when they are about to give birth. So the other need to have the baby on the back is to protect these themselves and the young ones from the large. This is the only threat, the predator that they have naturally in the wild is tigers. So we often see these images, hear them, especially in our India tour that starts for the Tiger Quest, which is in Ranthambore. So we have quite often we hear the news of tiger and sloth bear interaction in summers because they come to water bodies where even the tigers hang out at that time. So usually sloth bears to see best time is from spring onwards till the early monsoon period. That's where they usually come towards water bodies. So that's where also the water bodies are taken by tigers. So on an average, 2 to 3% of a tiger's diet is sloth bear, but that's because it's very hard animal to get to, especially when they're facing each other. Their claws open and their teeth is really, and they have a very painful bite. So tigers generally avoid. But as I said, when the sloth bear is busy digging with all its primary senses buried inside a termite mound, that's when they are highly vulnerable. So their one of the prime senses is their sense of smell. The acute sense of smell can smell termite mounds quite deep under the ground, about 3 to 4 feet. Sometimes we've seen that once they smell in an area, even when you don't see actually a termite mound at all. So even there, we've noticed that sloth bear just smells the ground like you know the like a bomb detector on the ground, like mines detector. So they just smell the ground and oh, this is it. So I hit a gold, and there they go. So the mother usually starts, and the young ones follow. How did you dig? And they learn this, and they dig open the ground. So they had this amazing digging apparatus with their arms. The forearms are extremely strong, which is also used for their defense. And the claws, the width of the claw is just perfect enough to pull out these chunks of mud outside the termite mound. And then you'll see they access the inner chambers, where these tiny holes in this image in the bottom right, these are the chambers where they blow the air so heavily and puff inside. So you can hear sometimes in summers when we are actually looking out for bears. Usually it's very hard to track a bear because they trust their nostrils, and it's unlike big cats that we follow their footsteps or tracks. For bears, we'll have to follow usually their sounds. So you hear sometimes inside a thicket, uh, like a huge pressure blowing into the earth. So where they probably try to loosen the grip of these termites, and they suck like a vacuum. They get a huge chunks of these termites. You see like white milky pods coming out of these termite mound, and they feed. So this is one of the images where the mother has brought its young to show that it's not necessary to dig open a termite mound. So even without a termite mound on a flat ground, they just dug open. This was a very interesting scene where the young ones were learning, and the mother was like she had given up. What did I bring these young ones to shop for? The young ones kept falling inside in that digging pit which she had dug open, and eventually they she just ate whatever was available. Also, while digging here, it's not just the termites; they also access some of the beetle larvae. Sometimes a few roots that are crisscrossing. We've observed some of these tree roots which hold certain nutrients below. They feed on that as well. And although adults have these amazing ability to climb trees, they still prefer to dig the earth. But when there is threat, especially from tigers and occasionally with other co-predators like leopards, very unlikely with leopards, but there are wild dogs which come in groups. So you often see these sloth bears getting treed up. And they also go up the tree to look for resin or sometimes honeybees. So some of these tree cavities, they have few species of bees, like the median bees and also the giant rock bee. So these bees are also another attraction. So we often see tall trees with a lot of crates of sloth bears sliding up and down, trying to access either the resin of the tree or the bees up there. So they start learning how to climb at a very young age, and when they're young, especially, it's fun to watch them. So, and also if there are other bears, especially males, very rarely you see a competition among them. If there is enough food, you don't find these sloth bears competing with each other. But sometimes the male may come to kill the young in order to access the mothers to mate. So that's when the young one, this is one of the incidents where the young one was pushed up a tree to be in safety while the mother was going to deal with the bear. There was an intense fight for about a good half an hour. And finally, the mother came back quite wounded, and the male bear also left. And she came back to this young one, and she continued on. And this young one lived for about another year or so, and then we didn't see them again after the monsoon. So sloth bears can be social when the resources are great, like the brown bears. Sometimes we see in the camera images or CCTV images in the dump yards. So if the resources are really good in certain areas, in southern India, there is a place called Daroji, where we see 7 to 8 sloth bears together. So there are social groups also observed. Otherwise, they have a loose home range where they wander about and stay in that home range usually. And males also have a large home range where they actively come and scrape the ground, their hind legs, and leave certain scent on the trees, usually using their scent glands and also the scent glands around the neck and face. So they rub those trees to leave messages. And also you see these messages left in their denning sites. So when sloth bears usually den if they have to on a regular basis when they have to rest. So there are two different ways of their denning. One is the maternity denning when the mother is going to give birth. Those places are very safe and usually on the edges of forest. But for sleeping, they have several places of dens where they sleep. If there are no dens available, like this bear, this is a beautiful mother with a young one. You can see the young one's leg also in the back hanging up. So they found a nice tree shelter. So it's a nice tree by the edge of the water body. So they just sleep there and spend the hot time of the day, like somewhere between midday 12 and until 4, they sleep under these trees and just doze off. So usually to avoid other wild pigs, langurs, which are the monkeys, and sometimes even other animals trying to use these shaded place. So they try and tuck themselves inside a thicket, which is thorny, and that's how they just sleep if there are no dens available. So this is another place where a mother was spending its noon siesta, midday noon siesta in a thicket where the wild dogs had found her and the young. And then like, they were just like confused what to do with this. But still, they made a little fortress, like three of them facing the pack. It held them. There was a brief interaction for about a few minutes, and then the wild dogs realized, okay, this is not the best animal to make an enemy out of, and they left eventually after drinking the water. So maternity denning sites are usually marked periodically, and mother bears and the male bears actively mark these areas to protect these areas for raising the young. So these denning sites are usually used when they're about to give birth, usually after October. Springtime to summer is when they mate, and after that, the mother spends about 3 to 4 weeks, where the young ones are born blind for about first couple of weeks. So mother tends to them in the inside the cave or denning site. So she doesn't come out for about 3 to 4 weeks out of that area. And maybe occasionally once a week or so she may come out to drink water. Usually the site itself is very close to water bodies and being in forest edges, but she won't come out to eat at all. Although she doesn't hibernate, but that's the stage where she invests her entire energy and dedication towards raising that young until they open their eyes for the first 1 month. And after that, you will see these extremely tiny young one already starting to hold on to their mother's back and riding on the back as she goes out to explore, so, for food. So female, especially the females, have a long fur or the hair around the shoulder, probably which is used by these young ones to hold on as a grip and camouflage. So it's just not as long in male bears, but females have this very long hair too. So if you're really keen on looking for sloth bears in India, so you will have to look for these bare necessities that these sloth bears need. So primary diet of theirs are these social insects, predominantly termites, ants, and in some places, occasionally, inside termite mounds also, they access bees and beehives. So this is one of the primary things. So bees, termites, ants are highly active somewhere from mid-spring onwards. This is this month in India, and all the way until early monsoons, which is in June. So this is a period where the bears are highly active, busy digging, moving from one place to another. And also this is the time where you have great diversity of trees that start giving out their fruits. So this is another reason that sloth bears, looking for sloth bear, the chances are pretty high in these months. So these tropical fruits and flowers also attract humans for its use. So that's when they both get into this competition. So usually you'll see in these months until the summer months of spring. So usually we see these sloth bears in a fleeting glimpse crossing the road or something like that, or just the backs in the grassland. So this is how we often encounter sloth bears. But sloth bears usually are encountered by these locals even in more closer proximity. So you can tend to hear these news of sloth bear attacks. So in fact, sloth bear attack is one of the highest among all the bears put together, including polar bears, brown bears. That's probably because their proximity of living around human habitation, one, and another is that the competition towards getting the fruits and also land use by humans around marginal forest areas. So, and another primary thing is their activity hours. Sloth bears are usually active around dusk and twilight hours. So that's when humans around these forest areas may use the forest edges for ablutions. These are the instances where the sloth bear and human interaction happens. And during the day, sometimes herders may encounter in their denning or sleeping areas where they suddenly startle. So often the bear attack happens because of their defense. It's just not really that the bears are waiting out for to attack humans. It's usually a defense, accidental most cases, where the bears are busy digging or looking for something else, and they get startled, and that's when they often get into that conflict with humans. So another conflicting area, like we were discussing about the flowers, is that the people community around the forest area also depend on the fruits and flowers in the forest. That's another period of time where we hear news of sloth bear and human conflicts. However, the much more challenges in the yesteryears, at least about 10 to 15 years ago, was probably the last news we heard about these dancing bears. So that's probably the Baloo in Jungle Book. We hear or see that the bear dance with the song tune, the bear necessities, is probably because of this dancing bear tradition by the group of people all over India. They're spread out called Kalandars. So this community usually had this as a profession of sloth bear training, and the English has documented a lot. They used to have sloth bears as pets, using these people to tame them. So, but various national and international wildlife welfare organizations has come together, and ever since the mid 90s, so the number of sloth bear or dancing sloth bears have reduced significantly. So if you look at capturing sloth bears and usually trying to use it for the entertainment purpose is now zero. And especially last 10 years, a few organizations like the Wildlife SOS, which operates in northern India and central India, has relocated and rehabilitated most of these sloth bears now. Over 600 bears have been now rehabilitated back into a safe sanctuary for bears. So other than this capturing for dancing and entertaining purpose, primarily sloth bear faces the accidents, the road kills, like we saw in the image, where they usually run in between and they bump into the busy traffics in Indian roads. And other accident, which is usually the open wells that we have. That's another open uh, pits that draw in a lot of wildlife, but sloth bear especially, because they get attracted towards water in summer months and then they fall into those open wells, and they usually get killed there if the wells are never attended. So there are poaching is there. Usually poaching is around some areas. Highest poaching that happens is usually in the Asiatic black bear for the gallbladder, which is used in Chinese medicine. Even sloth bears, gallbladders, claws, and teeth is used for various medicine and also for artifacts. So Wildlife SOS is one of the organizations in India which is, apart from working with elephants and reptiles and leopards, sloth bear is one of the primary work systems, ethics, where they conserve and protect bears. And mostly they started with the Kalandars, the bear dancing community. From there, they rescued those people, and eventually from also from any threats or problem bears around the wilderness areas which are known to kill humans. So they have rehabilitated and studied these bears about their behavior. So Wildlife SOS is, their logo itself is a sloth bear. They are the active group that is working on sloth bears in India. So if you're coming down to India looking for sloth bears, so from now onwards, from spring until summer is one of the best times to see. Central India is one best place to see, and also the India Tiger Quest, where we do it in Ranthambore. That's another great place to see sloth bears in these months from March onwards until June. So I really hope each one of us, when you come to India, to get to see this wonderful bear in India and get a great idea of this landscape where sloth bears live. And yeah, enjoy the ride as we track these sloth bears in these bumpy forests of central India and the west. So we are open to questions if you have any questions about sloth bears.
Thank you so much, Vineith. That was amazing. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to remind everyone that they can submit their questions via the questions field in the control panel. We have a few, so let's go ahead and get started. Will male bears kill the cubs in order to mate with the female?
Yeah, it's interesting, this question. Usually this wouldn't happen often, we've seen, but in Satpura where I worked, I have seen in two occasions where uh, the male bear has killed the female, the cub to get to the female, and it has also mated for about a week after that. One occasion. So several occasions I've seen the female and the young being there, and the male bear has spent time with the mother as well as the young. Probably the young one was the females, which was left to be around the mother.
Hmm. How long do the baby bears depend on their mothers for milk?
So for the first 5 to 6 months, they depend on milk. So I have seen the young as old as about 4 or 5 months also suckling on the young, but also at the same time they feed on termites and fruits within like second or third itself.
Why are sloth bears poached?
Sloth bears historically, like I said, was poached usually for dancing and other entertainment, and but consistently they've been poached for their gallbladder, which is used in Chinese medicine, and also the claws and the tooth.
Huh, interesting. It seems like bears of all kinds will go after bees and beehives. Do other bears eat termites or other insects, or just sloth bears?
So yeah, bears in generally they feed on a very diet. Uh, like some bears strictly in their, depending on the landscape, they prefer the highest of that. But sloth bears are designed along with sun bears. So sun bear is another bear which has got a very long tongue, almost about a foot long tongue, which is designed to lick the termites and ants from the groups of trees. So sloth bears and sun bears are particularly designed, their adaptation, their digestive juices probably, and their mouth part is all designed to feed mostly on termites.
Do sloth bears shed during the months when the temperatures are high?
So you mean to say they shed their fur? So
Correct.
the undercoat fur is absent. So they have this long woolly hair, which is usually probably it's thought that it is a defense from all the social insects that they feed on, like bees and termites and ants, which give them painful bites. So that's the long hair as a defense. So I have not seen them shed around the year at all. Even during the hottest months, they wear this thick coat always.
Hmm. How long do the cubs stay with the mother? Does she actively kick them out at a certain age, like some other animals?
Yeah, that's interesting. For about 2 years or 3 years, and again, this depends on the co-predators. If there are tigers also actively breeding around, we've seen mothers with their cubs even for about 3.5 years together. And if the resources are very limited and there is a lot of competition or human interferences, so we've seen the mother with their cubs again for 2 or 3 years. So if the resources are enough, there is enough space, the mother would probably not actively kick out, but the young ones would just go wean on their own. And males especially are kicked out, like in few occasions we've seen when the other male bear comes, the larger male bear comes. So the males are usually kicked out of that small group. either temporarily or permanently eventually, that will leave the place.
Can a sloth bear effectively protect themselves in a fight with other predators like leopards or wild dogs?
Yes, sloth bears, the primary predators for them, I mean, usually there are no other animal that are in the wild in India that they can usually have a threat from other than tigers. So tigers are the primary predators, and the entire idea of piggybacking their young is to protect themselves from tigers. And the sharp claws and the painful bite that they have really can put off a tiger. So tiger actively, if it faces on the face to face, tigers usually avoid confronting bears.
Fascinating. Let me see if we have, oh, we just got another question or two. How do animals survive the hot summers in India? It seems like their fur would be suffocating.
Yeah, we used to wonder this also. I mean, it gets up to about 100, 105 at times in month of May, and that's when these bears, especially with long shaggy coat, move out. So I'm sure they spend a lot of time around water bodies, one, and they reduce their activity times. So usually you see sloth bears are active between 4 a.m. in the morning until about 7 in the morning in summer months, and then they're out for resting. All other wildlife from April late onwards, somewhere after 8:30 or 9, they don't move about and they stay very close to water body. And it's like that Jungle Book's Peace Rock. I've seen sloth bears sleeping by the water bodies, and also tigers on the other side on the water body when the heat is so high. So don't even go for conflict and confrontation.
Fascinating. Okay. How many sloth bears are there in India, and where else can you find sloth bears?
Yeah, that's sloth bears are very tricky animals to count. Unlike the tigers and other cats, since they have the unique pattern. So roughly an estimate is about somewhere about 6 to 10,000 numbers within Indian subcontinent. So apart from India, within the subcontinent, sloth bears are found in Pakistan, Nepal, and some parts of in Bangladesh. It's extinct almost. In some parts of Bhutan, and in Sri Lanka, there is another subspecies which is much smaller than the sloth bear you find in mainland India.
What are the best months to see moms and cubs?
I would say best months is, I mean, your moms and cubs are there around the year because they stay together for about at least 2 to 3 years. So the smallest one in the picture that you would see usually is they start somewhere from November, December onwards to start bringing them outside their places. But the visibility is best from now, March until June, because they bring them out towards water bodies much openly and boldly.
And what are the best national parks in India to see sloth bears?
One of the highest chances to see sloth bears is in southern India, in a very famous place called Hampi, which is known for its ruins. Near that area, there is a park called Daroji. That is one of the best places to see. I would say the go-to place to see sloth bear. But in central India, Satpura, where NatHab has been conducting extended tours within the central Indian tours. So this is another beautiful park where this is where you can not just see sloth bears on the vehicle, but also this is one area which allows walking safaris to be conducted in the reserve, where we can track these sloth bears on foot as well.
Let's see. Is the litter usually just one or two cubs?
Usually one or two. Occasionally, I have seen up to 3. Yeah.
Wow. um, we have heard that the bears, let me see if I can understand this, that the bears eat mahua leaf and get high. Is that true? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. So mahua is, let me go back up here. Uh, so the top right is the mahua flower, which the people also collect in the bottom left here. These flowers fall from the tree, and these flowers usually come in the months in this month, actually February, March. So this year it's pretty early. So they, each tree drops in uh, about close to 15 to 20 pounds sometimes of flowers each night for a fortnight. And this is when it attracts a lot of wildlife. And these flowers are highly rich in sugars, and sloth bears, as they feed, and they tend to be in their stomach after about a week or so. It's not immediate alcoholic potency, but it starts fermenting slowly, and it makes them a bit drowsy. So mahua is one flower which draws a lot of wildlife. Civets, especially, that's one of the primary animal, and bats. So these are the primary mammals that mahua attracts, and sloth bears also prefer to use some of these trees wherever they're flowering.
Hmm. Do the
And
bears who used,
sorry,
oh, sorry.
Sunny, so also needed to add, and during the flowering period, like somebody asked this question, it's very intelligent question, because during this flowering period, the later part after the flowering, it's one of the hardest time to find these bears, because they are found drowsing somewhere after feeding all these flowers, and as these flowers starts fermenting.
Interesting. Do the bears who used to work as dancing bears go to a sanctuary when their owners can no longer make them perform, or what happens to them?
So the bears now in the sanctuary have been like given a safe space, and some of the people who have been uh, the community which operates this dancing, the Kalandars, are also employed in terms of their knowledge base by the organization, various bear organizations in India, for their skill set of and knowledge about these bears.
Hmm. Well, I think that's the last question we have today, so I'm going to turn it back to you for some closing comments.
Thank you so much, Sunny. So it's very interesting landscape, and I was just discussing with Sunny earlier. So what do you think about the bears in India? So it's very hard for uh, people outside India to associate India with bears. And surprisingly, other than tigers and lions and cheetahs of late, and snow leopards, bears are one of the most amazing animals found in India, and very common. And out of the 8 species, you should know that we have 4 species of bears in India, and sloth bears are the most diverse and common bears in India. So I do wish, when people come down to India during these trips in these months coming from now, get to see one of these bears, and especially mother with young.
Hmm. I learned a lot today. As we said, now I will definitely associate India with bears. Thank you so much again for presenting to us today. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.